Welcome everyone to a very special, very different UXPA event for April 2020, where we are going to be looking at imposter syndrome and how that impacts UX professionals. It goes without saying I'd rather be welcoming you under different circumstances, but one thing that this does do is it gives us the opportunity to reach out to people who wouldn't normally be able to come to our in-person monthly events in London. I also see many familiar faces who have joined, past members of the committee, past colleagues. So I'd like to welcome you all to this remote event. It's a very quick introduction to UXPA-UK for those who are maybe dialing in from abroad who haven't engaged with us previously. We have been going for about 18 years supporting the UX community in the UK. We are run entirely by volunteers, so we do put these events together in our spare time. In normal times, we run monthly face-to-face events, workshops, and also have a mentoring scheme. Obviously, with the situation, we have decided to go remote and keep things going as best we can. And just a reminder that the next scheduled event will be on May the 21st for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I'd like to thank the rest of the committee for obviously supporting the event and getting the newsletter out. For those of you who don't know, my name is Chris and I'm the current president, but I'd like to give special thanks to Annalisa and Lena, who have really done a lot of the groundwork to get this up and running. So thank you guys. Just in terms of how the event's going to run, we have two talks, each for around about 25 to 30 minutes. We'll have each talk and then there'll be a short period afterwards for Q&A. I think if we use the chat function to have questions for the speakers, or if you are brave, please do unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question. I would ask, of course, though, that you please stay on mute while the speakers are speaking. We will finish by in good time for 8 o'clock, so we can all join together and thank our essential workers. And also there will be a post-event survey that goes out where you can give us feedback and comments. So on to our first speaker. This is Jo Franchetti from April, and she is a developer advocate. And we're going to pause for a moment while I hand control to Jo, and she will take you through her talk for the next 25 minutes or so.
Thanks very much, Chris. Okay, can you all see my screen? And can you all hear me? Yes, excellent. Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming. My name is Jo and I'm going to be talking about perfectionism, imposter syndrome and anxiety, and how we can all learn to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. My name is Jo Franchetti. I am a developer advocate at April Realtime. That is a photo of me with my hair in, well, let's just say better times. And I'm just going to introduce you very briefly to what April does and then what I do, and then we'll get started talking about imposter syndrome. So April is a platform which enables developers to stream real-time data easily and reliably. And my job as a developer advocate is to write tutorials and demos and to try and make it easier for developers to get started using the platform. And I've been a web developer for about 10 years, and I've worked in many different sectors, from small startups to big organizations to charities to civil service. I even attempted being self-employed for a little while. That didn't work very well for me because it turns out I'm not very good at asking for money. I'm also a coach and organizer at Code Bar London, which is where we teach underrepresented groups in tech how to code. And what I'm trying to get across with all of this information is that I spend a lot of my time talking to developers, to designers, to their teams from all different seniority levels and from many different walks of life. And I've started to notice some trends, and these are trends in behaviors and in beliefs, and indeed complaints amongst people who work in the tech industry. And so to illustrate some of these, I'd like to tell you about a friend of mine. Let's call her Mo. And while I tell you about Mo, I'd like you to see if you recognize any of her behaviors in yourself. So Mo is a front-end developer. She's got a few years of experience under her belt, and she works on a team with other people in a medium-sized organization. Mo went to uni like her teachers told her that she should, but she feels like maybe she chose the wrong course. But at the time, she was too afraid to change course midway through her degree. So instead, she graduated and decided to completely reskill. She taught herself HTML and CSS with a view to becoming a web developer. But she's always had this sort of niggling worry that her skills aren't as good as everyone else's because she was self-taught. And sometimes she worries that she doesn't know the correct names or techniques for the things that she's making, or that she just doesn't know as much as everybody else does. But she doesn't want to ask her colleagues for help in case she lets on all of the things that she doesn't know. She worries that they'll judge her. She imagines this sort of shocked look on their faces where they turn and say to her, "What, you don't know that? How don't you know that? That's so easy." So Mo tries to keep up with all of the technologies that she's using by reading tutorials and attending meetups and events, but sometimes she feels like everyone else just gets the stuff that she's struggling with. There are people out there who are writing and designing new and awesome frameworks and tools while she's still trying to learn the previous ones. And sometimes she just feels like a fraud. And she follows a lot of web celebrities on various social media platforms to help her stay up to date. And she's amazed at how much the speakers at the events that she attends and these people on social media are able to get done. It feels like they're creative geniuses. They never have to ask for help. They never get stuck. Their days just seem to have more hours than hers do. And they've all got side projects on the go. Now, Mo's got a few ideas for side projects, but she doesn't know how to get started with some of them, and others she just can't seem to finish. She worries that people will judge them for being too unoriginal or too simple, so she never puts them in the public eye. She just keeps tweaking them indefinitely. And if she's really honest, sometimes she just can't even face a side project. She sits at a computer all day at work without having to come home and sit at one too. And her worry about not keeping up with everyone else and not being good enough often bothers her throughout the workday. And sometimes she's so worried that she can't concentrate on what she's doing. And then she worries that she's wasted time worrying. So she works longer hours and takes fewer and shorter breaks. But she still doesn't ask for help because that would be giving her secret away. And in order to hide how worried she is about her own lack of knowledge, she starts attending more events and she joins more organizations. And people often tell her that they don't know how she manages to fit it all in, but she just smiles and shrugs off their comments because that means that her cover is working, that they'll never find out that she's a fraud. And sometimes she finds that when she gets home from work or an event, she doesn't have time or energy to deal with chores or even with seeing her friends. And her diet has become quite poor because of all the free pizza that she's eating at these events. And she's drinking more alcohol than she used to, but you know, it's a free bar, so what you gonna do? And even though she gets to bed late, she struggles to get to sleep at night because she can't seem to get her brain to switch off. It likes to switch between worrying about her workload and running lists of all the things that she hasn't got done around the house. And her ability to concentrate at work starts to suffer because she's not sleeping well, she's not eating well, and she procrastinates a lot instead of getting work done. She'll do emails, she'll check social media, anything to put off actually getting started. She's worried that when she does get started, her work is going to be judged. And then she panics when she thinks that she's not got enough work done throughout the day. And her stand-up meetings become a dread every morning because she wonders that her team is going to ask her why she's not being productive. Maybe they're going to judge her. Maybe even worse, they're going to fire her. By the way, her team think that she's doing absolutely fine. They only ever see the output of the extra long hours of work that she puts in, and not the hours of procrastination that come before it. And one day at work, Mo gets an email from a colleague saying that they found a mistake in some of the work that she's done, and something inside of her just kind of snaps. And she runs to the bathroom because she knows she's going to start crying, and she doesn't want anyone to see. She cries uncontrollably for an hour, and once she's done, she cleans up her face, and she goes back to her desk, and she pretends that nothing has happened. Everyone else around her seems to be able to cope with their workload. They just tell her to buck up her ideas. And occasionally, Mo can't face going into work at all. And on those days, she calls in sick, but she never tells anyone that it's her mental health that's suffering and not her physical health. And Mo's mental health continues to suffer. She feels like there's a constant weight on her chest. She has heart palpitations during the day, and at night she frequently jolts awake with her heart racing. And finally, Mo has a panic attack at work, and her breathing becomes sharp and shallow, her vision blurs, and she can't get off the floor. She can't even think straight. She finally reaches out to a friend, sending a message saying, "I can't breathe." And thankfully for Mo, her friend was able to talk her back to calmness and helped her to realize that she needed to start facing her fears and her anxieties. She started therapy, and she started learning about the causes of anxiety and stress. And she learned that the kind of mental health issues that she was facing, that was anxiety related to imposter syndrome and perfectionism, actually plague many people who work in the tech industry, but we often don't talk about it. So if you recognize any of Mo's behavior in yourself, I'd like to talk you through some of it now. So I'd like to give you a short introduction to some of the issues that Mo faced, along with some questions to ask yourself, some methods of recognition, and some self-care techniques, so that you don't ever have to go through what she did. So let's get started. Firstly, imposter syndrome. You might have heard it called imposter phenomenon or imposter experience, but imposter syndrome describes the feeling that you haven't really earned your accomplishments, that by fraud or dumb luck, you've ended up in the same place as others who you deem worthy, but you don't feel like you deserve to be there. And to call it a syndrome kind of downplays how universal this experience is. It's not a disease, it's not an abnormality, and it isn't tied to anxiety or self-esteem every time, but it is prevalent in highly skilled, highly intelligent, and highly creative people, who are just the kind of people who are attracted to the tech industry. So where do these feelings come from? People like yourselves who are skilled and intelligent tend to think that your colleagues are also skilled and intelligent, and this can sometimes cause you to judge yourself against others and to do so unfairly and harshly. And this judgment can cause you to believe that you don't deserve the opportunities or the qualifications or the accolades that you've earned, or that in some way the skills that you've gathered aren't worth as much as the skills that other people have gathered. And this can sometimes also be coupled with a belief that any qualifications or accolades you have earned somehow aren't worthwhile anymore, or they aren't praiseworthy. Have you ever striven to achieve something only to feel like it came too easy, or that someone maybe made a mistake in awarding it to you, or that it isn't enough and you have to constantly start working towards the next thing and the next thing? Imposter syndrome doesn't let you feel pride or joy in your achievements. And another problem with imposter syndrome is that our fears can be intensified by a phenomenon known as pluralistic ignorance. This is where we doubt ourselves in private, but we never voice our doubts. We believe we're alone in thinking that way because nobody else talks about their worries either. And this can be especially exacerbated by things like social media, where people tend to present only their best achievements and their successes. People rarely purposefully publish their mistakes, their self-doubts, or their own foibles. So it becomes really difficult to know how hard our peers are working, how difficult they find certain tasks, or whether or not they ever get stuck or need help, or whether or not they ever doubt themselves. And this means that there's no easy way for us to dismiss these feelings that we're less capable than the people around us. So with a view to sharing and showing how prevalent this issue is, I'd like to share with you some famous and incredible people who have also suffered from imposter syndrome. So Maya Angelou, even after writing 11 books and winning many, many awards, still felt like she hadn't really earned her accomplishments. She said she felt like she'd run a game on everybody and they were going to find her out. The talented and seemingly confident Emma Watson feels like she doesn't deserve any of her achievements. She says, at any moment someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud. And if you can believe it, even Albert Einstein experienced imposter syndrome. He described himself as an involuntary swindler whose work didn't deserve as much attention as it had received. And talking with others about imposter syndrome is the best way to start recognizing these fears for what they are. They're normal but immaterial, and they're certainly unfactual. Whenever I'm worrying about, that someone around me knows more than me or that I don't belong, I like to think of this thing that I call Schrodinger's imposter syndrome. So the idea here is that I have convinced myself that my peers are far more intelligent and accomplished and brilliant than I am. And yet somehow they're also so gullible and stupid that I have cleverly tricked them into believing that I belong amongst them. Now, these two statements can't be true. They can't be both more clever than me and more stupid than me. My logic is fallible, and therefore likely so is my disbelief in myself. And we may never be able to banish imposter experience entirely, but we can have open and frank conversations with our peers, with our seniors, with our mentors and our friends, and build confidence that many people feel this way. And it doesn't mean that we have to give it any credit. So the second thing that I'd like to talk to you about is perfectionism. And when I was preparing for my first ever job for my first ever interview for a tech job, I was given this very common piece of advice that I'm sure many of you have also heard. If an interviewer ever asks you what your weaknesses are, just tell them you're a perfectionist. And this particular piece of advice was given to me and countless others by my boss in my job at the time. It's the kind of statement that makes everyone roll their eyes. Interviewees and interviewers alike know that it's a cop-out answer. The idea is you're not really revealing any weakness because employers want to hire perfectionists. Perfectionists do great work, right? They do perfect work. But it never occurred to me at the time, as I naively accepted this older and more experienced man's instruction, that I'd grow to learn the real truth behind this statement. So if you look it up on Wikipedia, it says that perfectionism in psychology is a personality trait characterized by a person striving for flawlessness and setting high performance standards, accompanied by critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding others' evaluations, which sounds great. If I were an employer, I'd want to hire someone who strives for flawlessness, who sets high standards and cares about others' evaluations. They sound like a real achiever. But perfectionism can often be a blocker to achievement. Imagine that you're constantly aiming for perfection, not greatness, not excellence, actual perfection. You can't help but set yourself up to fail. Achieving perfection is not something that happens often. And perfectionists often measure our own self-worth by how able we are to achieve this perfection, by how much we can accomplish. And if accomplishments aren't attained, we can be very harsh on ourselves. The trouble is that for perfectionists, performance is intertwined with our sense of self. When we don't succeed, we don't just feel disappointed about how we did, we feel shame about who we are. And perfectionists often engage in this thing called catastrophic thinking, or you might have heard it called black and white thinking, where everything becomes either perfect or terrible. And even things that most people would call great or good enough fall into the terrible category. An example could be fear of publishing a piece of work because somebody might find an error in it. The idea of somebody finding an error becomes this end of world scenario rather than something that is manageable that you could work through if and when it happens. Now, I was diagnosed as a perfectionist a few years ago, and it was actually a relief for me to finally have a name to put to this stress that I was feeling. Every time I made a mistake or I had a mental block, I spiraled into this kind of depression and decision paralysis, which made my mental block worse and my disgust with myself greater. And one time, the anxiety that I felt over my own failure to create a perfect piece of work was so bad that it manifested into crippling neck pain And the doctors had to eventually put me on Valium to force me to relax and to take some time out from trying to achieve this ridiculous perfection. And the tech industry and capitalism and our society as a whole love it when we strive for perfection. They want us to be constantly building more, better things, be the most successful, earn the most money, then you can spend it on becoming even better. And tech employers will often encourage this unhealthy belief that we should be constantly striving to work harder, to create more, to learn everything, as if learning everything is even possible. And we start to feel guilt when we're not working. And we shame ourselves for taking breaks. We work on our sick days and we answer our email when we're on holiday. And perfectionist employees will often pressure themselves into tiredness, into depression, into paralysis and burnout, all while continuing to hand in perfectly excellent work, never daring to ask for help because that would be admitting that they can't be perfect all the time. And much like those with imposter syndrome, perfectionists will often disregard their own accomplishments because they're not enough. As soon as something that they were working on is achieved, it's instantly disregarded because it didn't bring that perfect feeling that they were hoping for. So they immediately start working on the next thing and the next thing. And it's an unsustainable and unhappy way to be and can very quickly lead to overwork and burning out. So if you're not sure whether you've ever had perfectionist tendencies, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. And firstly, and this is the one that got me, would you consider yourself a perfectionist? So if you answered something along the lines of, as I did, oh no, there's no way I'm good enough to be a perfectionist, then I'm afraid I've got news for you. Have you ever felt like you can't start a project because you can't decide on how to start? And sometimes figuring out the perfect way to start can be a blocker to even getting started. Have you ever found yourself repeatedly scrolling through social media or watching reruns on Netflix or even tidying your house when you knew you should be getting started on a project? Perfectionists procrastinate when we don't know how to start or finish a project. Not working on the project means that it can't be a failure because it's never going to be finished. It's never going to be actualized. Have you ever left a project unfinished because you couldn't get it exactly how you wanted it? It feels not exactly perfect quite yet, so you keep adding bits or tweaking bits, but you're still not ready to actually show it to anyone or get anyone's opinion on it. Have you ever felt afraid or ashamed about asking for help from a colleague or peer? Because maybe that will show that you don't know something or that you can't manage something. And perfect people know everything, right? It's better just to try that 1000th Google search than to turn to the person next to you and ask them a question. So what can we do both as perfectionists and friends of perfectionists to help make our industry a safer and kinder place to work? So the first thing that you have to do is allow yourself time. Sometimes you just can't tackle a problem. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you'll never be able to. It just means that you can't do it right now. So give yourself some time out and don't let feelings of guilt or shame take over. Take a half-an-hour walk or even take a whole day away from the problem. But make sure that you schedule in a start time for when you're going to try and tackle it in the future. Set deadlines and goals and schedules that are realistic. And you can either set them for yourself or you can ask someone to help you set them. Too much freedom can be very actually stifling to perfectionists. We need something to be able to aim for and then improve upon. Given a blank canvas, we have a tendency to procrastinate or to start and abandon multiple projects. Setting achievable goals will allow you to strive for excellence while removing the paralyzing nature of an open-ended task. And setting schedules and deadlines means that at some point you will be encouraged to start the work that you're procrastinating on. Try and remember that perfect is the enemy of great. Perfectionism isn't about high standards, it's about unrealistic standards. Getting something out is better than abandoning all of your hard work. And you'll likely be surprised that not only will no one else notice the imperfections that you thought were giant blockers, they'll actually think that your work is great. Try and acknowledge that you are your own most harsh critic. Most people don't expect perfection from other people. Perfectionists only think that they do. No one is going to judge you as harshly as you judge yourself. It's okay to make mistakes, everybody does. It's even okay to release an imperfect piece of work. It's even okay if somebody spots a mistake in your work. You can thank them, you will learn from it, and you'll both move on with your lives, and the world will not end. It's easy to start putting yourself down when you don't meet your own unachievable expectations. Consider how you'd react if someone said the things that you're thinking about yourself to one of your friends. Try and think your fears through to their logical conclusion. Now, this is one that really helps me. So instead of the catastrophic or black and white thinking where you think, if I make a mistake in front of my colleagues, then this will be the end of everything, consider what the end of everything actually looks like. Do the Dr. Pepper test. What's the worst that could happen? Consider the worst possible outcome of your fear, and then be honest with yourself about how likely that scenario actually is. And then you can start to consider how such an event would actually play out and how bad or not it would actually be. So let's take the example of we've released a piece of work and someone has found a mistake in it. Let's say it's one of your colleagues. At worst, they might laugh at you. Sure, some people are assholes, but they might just point it out and ask you to fix it, or they might even help you to fix it. And then you get to fill a gap in your knowledge. And work will continue, life will continue, and the end will not come. Teaching yourself to think your fears through to their logical conclusion will save you hours and hours of worrying and spiraling. And the more I've spoken about my experiences with perfectionism, the more people have told me about their own similar problems. And with the tendency for intelligence and achievement in people who work in the tech industry, it's perhaps unsurprising that so many of us suffer from perfectionism. And the more we talk about these issues, the less stigma we'll feel around dealing with them and around helping others through them. We can validate our own and each other's experiences. It's okay to, turn to somebody who's having problems and say, yes, this is hard sometimes. The job that we do is actually really hard. The more open and communicative we are about mental health in the tech industry, the more pleasant a working experience we can create for everyone. So the final issue that I'd like to talk to you about and that I'd like for you to watch for in yourselves is anxiety. And anxiety is an entirely natural and normal feeling. Worrying about a new experience or a deadline or a scary situation is completely understandable. But anxiety becomes a problem if you're feeling it generally or if you're feeling it over an extended period of time. There's a theory that says that we learn anxiety as babies. When we're tiny and helpless, we rely entirely on being lovable enough for someone else to give us everything that we need. But for some of us, that need to feel loved and accepted and the worry that we're not good enough to be loved never goes away. And we need constant reassurance that we're doing okay. And in the last few years, we've been given some really powerful tools for checking whether or not we're doing okay in comparison to everyone else. Obviously, I'm talking about social media. And not only that, it gives us the ability to get instant validation on our decisions and our life choices. Posting on social media gives us a means of presenting the lives that we would like our lives to be, and to get validation in the form of likes and comments. But we can't help comparing the actuality of our lives with the beautiful, idealized illustrations that everyone else is putting out there, which can constantly stoke this fear that we're doing less well than others. And both imposter syndrome and perfectionism can be causes of anxiety and can impact on your mental well-being. A record numbers of people are experiencing poor mental health, according to the World Health Organization. Depression, anxiety, and suicide ideation are more common in the UK now than they have ever been in the past. And a good prediction of depression is self-criticism, which perfectionists and those with imposter syndrome are really good at. Worsening matters, being self-critical not only leads to depressive symptoms, but those symptoms can make your self-criticism worse, which creates this horrible loop. And it's been shown that one of the best protections against anxiety and depression is self-compassion, which is the very thing that perfectionists are not very good at. So how can we improve our self-compassion and our self-care? Because really it does take practice and patience. So the first thing we have to do is we have to change where we look for validation. We're used to these external signs of success. We get praise from our parents. Our teachers give us grades to tell us how we're doing. We take exams and tests. But then when we move on to a job and a career, we feel the need for that validation, but we can find it less readily. So we start looking to unhealthy sources for indications of whether or not we're succeeding. We crave our next Twitter or Instagram like. We want to be on the highest possible salary that we can. But the problem with external validation is that it's fleeting. 1 or 2 likes on social media can feel good. A pay rise can feel great. But the thing is, the feeling eventually wears off and we go back to feeling insecure again. And self-validation is the idea of accepting your own internal experience, your thoughts and your feelings, and knowing within yourself that you're enough and you don't have to perform for others. It's the idea of accepting good enough instead of perfect, because it really is good enough. And learning self-validation will allow you to calm yourself when you're feeling panic or anxiety. And being calmer will allow you to manage your internal mean voice more effectively. So how do we learn to self-validate? Firstly, instead of resolving to change your behavior instantly, learn to recognize it. So when you find yourself engaging in negative thoughts about yourself, or procrastination, or answering your work email while you're on holiday, whatever behavior it is that you're concerned about, firstly, just acknowledge it and consider it. Once you've reached a point where you can notice yourself engaging in that bad habit, then you can start to consider reasoning with yourself over why you're doing it. If you're feeling insecure, consider whether it's really you or whether it's a societal pressure that is making you feel that way. If you find yourself procrastinating, let yourself have the time, but schedule in start time for an hour. And if you're checking your work email too much, check it, realize that you've done it, close it, put the phone down. But don't berate yourself for it. Acknowledge it, accept that it happened, consider it, and reflect on what might be behind the issue, where that thought has come from, and think about how you can manage it in future. And speaking of reflecting on these things, if you have trouble getting to sleep at night, it might be because you've not spent enough time reflecting on your day and your experiences. I don't know about you, but I constantly have that thing where I put my head down on the pillow ready to go to sleep and my brain goes, oh, remember that embarrassing thing that you did like 2 years ago? Let's go through that in graphic detail. And you're just sort of lying there sweating instead of getting to sleep. Or you can avoid that by spending some downtime either before bed or whenever is best for you, thinking about your day and how it went and how you feel about it. No phones, no screens, just you and your thoughts. And try and consider only the facts. Don't make assumptions. So I got 3 tasks done today that I needed to do and I feel good about it. But I haven't done that one thing and that is kind of worrying me. And my friend cancelled on me for lunch and that's made me really annoyed. These are all valid thoughts. I didn't get that one task done because I'm a failure and I'm no good at anything. That's an assumption and not a fact. If you catch yourself thinking like that, try and consider where that thought might have come from. Are you being driven by your need for perfection? Or are you believing the stories of capitalism that say that you have to get so much done during the day? Or, dare I say it, are you believing the words of the patriarchy? Accepting only the facts of your experience will help you to build trust in your internal validation and will help you to catch these bad habits quicker. And if you need help to manage your procrastination, there are so many techniques and tools and apps out there that can help you. Download something that'll block social media on your phone or on your desktop. Use a timing technique such as Pomodoro. And schedule in clear work and rest hours. That way you can't make yourself feel guilty about when you're not working. But the thing is, you need to find the things that work best for you and give them a chance. And be truthful with yourself about what is and isn't working, because we're changing habits of a lifetime here, and that takes time. And finally, try and get in touch with what helps to calm you when you're feeling anxious or overtired or just in need of a little bit of me time. For some people, it's a walk around the block or listening to music, meditation, taking a bubble bath. But it has to be able to come from you and not from somebody else. It should be things that reduce your blood pressure rather than raise it. So posting to Twitter doesn't count. Texting your crush doesn't count either. Eating a kilo of chocolate or drinking a liter of coffee, they don't count either, I'm afraid. Self-soothing has to be things that you can do for yourself, to give yourself time to feel validated and happy, to step out of that whirlwind of emotion and just take a look and go, actually, this is okay, and I can deal with this. And why am I telling you all of these things? Because I never want anyone else to go through what I did, to feel alone or unsupported. If you haven't already guessed, my story is my story. And because I think that by talking about it, we can really increase awareness and learning about mental health in the industry that we work in. Because it can be a wonderful and empowering and brilliant place to be, and because you all deserve to be there. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Joe. I think we'll all give a virtual applause, or real applause in this case. There were quite a few slides there where I just thought, yep, that's me, or you know, I've experienced that situation. But I think obviously what we'd like to do is we have a few minutes now for questions. So I can see the chat is alive. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to submit via the chat, or do feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Joe?
Just to say, I'm also, my DMs are open on Twitter, so if you felt anything during this and you'd like to talk about it, please feel free to DM me. So there's a question here: how would you recommend dealing with a direct line manager that encourages burnout and working until midnight? Oh, that's a tough one. First of all, you know in your own mind how much you're capable of getting done, and you need to recognize the point at which it's becoming too much and really put limits on, no, I've done enough today, I'm stopping now. And if it gets to a point where you're telling that line manager, no, I've done my hours, I've done enough, and they're not listening to that, then maybe you need to raise it higher. I absolutely would not be afraid to talk to someone above them and say, look, I'm feeling under a lot of pressure. I don't feel like I'm able to get the amount of work done that they want, but I do feel like I'm doing enough work. Please, can we manage this situation?
I have a question. So one of the things I find is that I find it very difficult to switch off.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've tried things like obviously exercise, relaxing, just watching, you know, a TV series you've seen several times just so you don't have to think. But there's always a point where when then I try and relax, things just start, you know, churning around in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for that? Because, like I said, that's something that's very quite personal to me, and it has impacted me at times in my life, in my career. So, any tips for how to switch off?
I think, unfortunately, with those kind of things that start coming to the front of your mind when you finally start to relax, those are the things that your brain is saying, we need to process this. And you're not going to get to the point where you can properly relax until you have actually spent time processing. So what I would say is scheduling time where you're not, it's not this is my relaxed time, it's this is my think about the things that I'm worrying about time. So that once you've had that time to process, you can start to sort of come down from that more anxious state. And then after that, you can have your relaxation time. But yeah, I think with any of these things, it takes a lot of practice. I mean, it was one of the things that my therapist told me was, before I could even get to a state where I could think about the things that were worrying me, I had to think about thinking about them. So I had to remember to actually schedule the time in. And it's all about practice and just doing it slowly and not feeling bad about the fact that, you know, you forgot to do it one day or you didn't manage to get through everything you were meaning to think about.
We have a couple of questions. We'll disregard the volume comment. I'm sure that we wouldn't encourage anyone to self-medicate or indeed procure volume for any reason. There are a couple of questions there. The first one, what emotional first aid do you recommend when you're under a shame attack to help you in the moment? So yeah, what's your immediate go-to tip when you're having these doubts?
So for me, it's breathing techniques. I mean, again, this is going to be quite a personal thing, and it's all about finding those things that are your own flavor of self-soothing. But for me, my Fitbit has an app on it that does a calm breathing counter. And so if I feel myself getting into that worked up state where I'm like, I'm stressed, I can turn that on, and it counts a sort of meditative breathing state for you, a slow in and out and in and out, and just letting your heart rate drop and controlling your breathing for 2 minutes is so good for me to be able to step out of that sort of tornado that is happening inside me and just go like, oh, yeah, we're spiraling. Okay, let's take a walk, or let's go make a cup of tea and just try and rationalize the problem that we're having, and what it is that's making us feel this shame. But again, it's such a personal thing.
And just a final question before we hand over to our next speaker. There was a question. Yeah, a lot of people seem to struggle with receiving feedback as a learning opportunity rather than criticism. Do you think that's a result of imposter syndrome?
I think it's a result of a lot of things. I mean, it certainly could be imposter syndrome. It certainly could be perfectionism. I think in general, many people are brought up to go on the defensive when they're criticized, rather than to turn around and say, oh, thank you, that's something that I will work on. And it's really difficult, and it takes a lot of self-work to realize that you do go on the defensive, or you have a tendency to attack when you get criticized. And yeah, I would agree, it definitely is a result of imposter syndrome, but it's also a result of a lot of societal pressure, and definitely also partly perfectionism.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Would you be able to pass the host back to me, please?
I shall certainly attempt that.
We've done well so far. There's been no technical hiccups. I think maybe a few people have had issues with sound at the start, but that seems to be resolved.
Did that work?
No, I don't think so. If you bring up the list of participants and find my name,
yeah,
you should be able to. There should be an option.
There we go.
Yep. Perfect. So, Chevy, I'm going to be the host now. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Chevy Ruff. He is a wellbeing coach and the CEO of Chasing Projects. Chevy, I'm going to make you the host now. So if you'd like to have your screen ready to share.
Got it. Thank you. You're our host. Hi, guys. Joe, thank you so much. That was amazing. And now I've got complete imposter syndrome. So I'm like, that was really clear and really great. And now I'm just like, I don't know how to follow that, right? The voices, the gremlins telling you, it's like the tone has been set. But thank you very much. That was really great. And I'm probably gonna do a really bad job, but there's definitely some stuff and some correlation here and relating to some of the questions that you guys have got as well. So hopefully we can kind of continue a bit of a theme here. Obviously, I'm now just figuring out where on earth my deck is and what's going on. So bear with me 2 seconds, guys. And while I'm doing this, I'm always super interested. Where are people watching this from now? Where are you guys? Where are you in your house? And where are you located in the world? That's what I need to know right now. So hit me up in the comments and let me know, guys. Georgia, we've got some America in the house. Fantastic. We've got a sofa room, a living room. North London. Whereabouts in North London? Amazing. So, but wow. We are global right now. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. See some wonderful human beings from around the world. Absolutely brilliant. And guys, while you're at it as well, if you could let me know what you guys do for a living, what your jobs are, and if you could let me know, that'd be fantastic. We're just going to get obviously, you know, I'm aware of what the community is, but it'd be good to know exactly what you guys do, and yeah, it gives me a feel for things. Amazing.
Chevy, I think you're sharing the. You need to share the presentation that currently you have. We have the speaker view on screen.
You've got the speaker view on. Okay. So it needs to be the other way. Right, got you. Right, bear with me. Is that better? No. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. It's always going to be. Why am I showing? Okay. So what I'll do. Let me. Okay. Hopefully, all you guys. Right. Is that better?
We currently just have a white screen at the moment. So when you select share screen,
Yeah.
it should give you the option of which window you want to share.
And share screen, keynote, share, play.
That's the one. Perfect.
There we go. Oh God, right. Breathe. This is where I start to lose it a little bit. Oh, the internet never goes according to plan. So, fantastic. Bear with me 2 seconds. Right. Okay. So now I can't see what's next, but we're gonna work this out as we go along. Okay. So guys, thank you very much for having me. Always super appreciated to be welcome into new communities. It's always a learning curve for me because I know nothing about you guys. I know nothing about your particular challenges that you might have. So this is a learning curve for me as much as potentially, hopefully, it is for you guys. And obviously, we're here to talk about burnout in the creative industry. I'm going to get into that in a little bit more. Let me start with a couple of things. First of all is, you know, I'll give you a bit of introduction to who I am in a second, but I always like to make it clear from the start that, you know, the world of health and well-being and, you know, mental health, physical health, you know, these things are quite scary subjects to speak about because we all look at these things through such different lenses. You know, what anxiety means to you might mean something completely different to me. What stress means to you might be completely different to Lena, to Chris, to Joe, to we've got Philip. So we've got Lydia. So, you know, these things mean so many different things. And within that, when I'm trying and I've got such a short amount of time with people in a room, as it were, I'm really going to try and get to some points as quickly as possible, some clear actionable takeaways for you guys. And I can be quite direct in my delivery. I can be very black and white in the way that I explain things. I also suffer myself from imposter syndrome. Like, I don't think I deserve to be here talking about this subject matter. And I have this kind of constant fear of failure in my head as well. So it takes me a while to just calm down a little bit. So within this kind of cauldron of me trying to do my best and trying to be black and white and trying to get the learnings across, I might say stuff quickly and abruptly. And if I cause anything that causes you to go, oh, I'm not comfortable with that, Chev, please do reach out to me afterwards. I'm at the Wellbeing CEO. My email is chevy@chasingprojects.com. You can find this all at the end. Please do reach out and I will happily give you some more context to explain some of the grey areas, or potentially I'll apologize and say, do you know what? I probably didn't explain that well, and I'm really sorry. And I can totally understand how you responded, how you did. You know, it's okay for us to disagree. It's okay for these things to happen, but it's important that we have communication about it. So I just always like to say that because, again, this subject matter is, we all look at it through such different lenses. And guys, there's a reason you should be skeptical of me. And I always like to make that clear is, firstly, I'm not a map maker. I'm on this journey with you. And what I mean by that is I am not a PhD. I haven't got any letters after my name. I'm not a therapist. I'm not an organizational psychologist. Yes, I'm a qualified coach. But you know what? To be honest with you, anyone qualifies as a coach. I'm going to say it out loud. Like, it's, through me, my learnings come through surrounding myself by very good people through qualifications that I've achieved. But again, I'm not a therapist. And it's really important to say that and clarify exactly where my learnings stop and my education stops on this subject matter. That might be a reason you want to be skeptical of me. The second reason you should be skeptical of me is because ultimately I'm trying to talk about your well-being in the space of about 35 minutes. Well-being is not a short-term game. Improving your health is not a short-term game. Anyone who's trying to sell you anything relating to that in such a short period of time, you need to be skeptical of and question. I think it's one of the big challenges that we have within the health and wellness space is people are trying to look for these quick fixes. It's not about your well-being today. It's about your well-being in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's a compound game. It's compound interest. So I just always like to say that, always be skeptical of people in front of you, especially relating to this subject matter, and ask me questions as we go and challenge me, and feel free to do that. And my time is your time. So we're here to talk about burnout in the creative industry. And the conversation that I want to have is really going to be, sorry, I've got housekeeping here. Always say do not disturb. I always like to put do not disturb on there. Please turn everything off. And the reason I say do that is because this is your time to look after you. And there's this thing called psychological residue, right? If you're suddenly focusing on one thing and then you jump over to another task and then try and jump back again, you have this residue left over, which stops you being able to give you your full focus. So it's a really important thing. And as always, please ask questions as we go along. Sorry, guys, because the way I was that presenter view, now I can't see what's next on my slide. So you're in for a ride right now. So the takeaways for today is hopefully you guys are going to get an understanding of some of the basic human needs. You're going to help understand kind of physiology before psychology. We're going to talk through some Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we're going to really start to understand and dig into the role of energy in human behavior. If we're talking about energy, we're talking about burnout, we're talking about energy. Energy is fundamental to everything that we do as human beings. 20% of the calories that you consume go to your brain and nervous system. How cool is that? Did you know chess masters, fantastic new bit of research out of Stanford University, chess masters can burn up to 6,000 calories in a chess tournament? Give me a mind blown emoji if that blows your mind, because that blows my mind. But people are like, well, they just sit there. How does that happen? Well, we need calories. We need energy to be able to think, feel, manage emotions, willpower, self-control. How many people you guys sit at desks all day, right? And that's what people tell you. Why are you tired at the end of the day? You just sit at a desk. Well, I don't just sit at a desk. I focus and I put a lot of energy into navigating the problems in front of me. So energy is a very real thing that dictates behaviors. And we also look at how to access creativity. Creativity is a real tool that we can access when we set up our right physiological state to do so. Hopefully I'm going to give you a little bit of insight. And creativity is not just for drawing or coding or thinking of the next technical problem that you've got to do. It's creativity for life problems, right? Trying to creatively come up for life solutions and deal with challenges that are in front of you. We all need access to creativity at the moment to kind of deal with the road ahead. So that's kind of hopefully some of the takeaways we're going to have takeaway. Guys, that's me. And the reason I'm a little bit more amped energy wise to rush through this, because this is a usual piece, this deck that I usually do, or kind of this kind of structure. I have a little bit more time. So I'm just kind of going to speed through it a little bit, but hopefully you're going to get some takeaways. So that's me. That is me. And just give you my background. I'm 38 years old, and I basically fell into the city at the age of 17, 18, and I never really got on with kids in the playground. I never really understand to hang out with boys. I never really liked football. I was always pretending I liked football, but I never really liked it. I was good at mimicking that, what happened last week down the game because of conversations that I'd overheard other kids having, but I never really fitted in. I struggled to fit in. I suppose that's a bit about the kind of imposter syndrome, like, who am I? I don't believe in who I am. And I thought I was a bit of a fraud. And for me, what happened from there was I fell into the city, and they kind of said to me down the first day, we're going to go down the pub and you're going to have a drink. And I'm like, okay, I'll have a drink. I'll have an orange juice, because I don't drink. And they went, no, here's a pint of beer. You'll learn to love it. And what I realized very quickly is that alcohol gave me superhero powers. Right? It gave me a place within the pack. It gave me a place within the tribe. It was like, you can trust Chev to go on a night out. And that was like, it became my identity was alcohol. It became the mask that I wore to be able to navigate through life. And alcohol led to cocaine. And what followed was well over a decade of substance abuse, drug abuse, and things got very dark, very bad. And what happened within that was that I managed to find my way out of it through movement. I know it's an awful picture. Come on. I know it's bad. Look at that guy. I mean, awful. Who runs in Ray-Bans? And I think that blonde girl lady behind me is probably swearing at me, telling me what she thinks of me. I mean, it's awful. But that was me, you know. I found running and I found confidence within it. I started putting one foot in front of the other. It wasn't plain sailing, guys. It really wasn't. It was a lot about 5 steps forward, 2 steps back. And for me, a lot of injury, right? It was this perfectionism, this kind of this fixed mindset of what success looks like. Like, I'm only good within my movement. The identity that I want to create is being fast, is running marathons, being cool while I'm doing it. That's what I think I look like ridiculous. But it did give me a pathway to change, and that was absolutely fantastic. Bear with me on this. You'll see where I'm going with reference to burnout and energy. So for me, it led to change, and I ended up leaving my old job, sitting behind a desk at the age of about 33. I retrained as a personal trainer, as a strength and conditioning coach, fell down the rabbit hole of qualifications and education from that perspective. And I got a phone call one day. And I got a phone call from BBC One, and come on, I'm allowed to show these pictures, right? I'm allowed to. I got a call from BBC One, and BBC One said, do you want to take 10 people with mental health conditions to the London Marathon? We've got a project called Mind Over Marathon. The royal family's going to be involved. Nick Knowles is presenting. He's a great guy. He's a good guy. And yes, William, Kate and Harry, we all became besties, and I hung out on one knee quite a bit. Within that, I never got my knighthood. I kept asking, never got it. And, you know, me and Harry, we almost became good friends, but not quite. No, this is such a shame. But that was it. And, you know, it's really funny because we talk about imposter syndrome. I'll tell you what, while all these pictures were being taken, I really didn't think, I was like, me? You want me to coach people with 10 people, mental health conditions like the marathon? You want me to do that on BBC One? Every single stage I thought I was a fraud. Every single damn day. And if you don't believe me, on the airing of the 2nd episode, I took my first antidepressant pill. I had hit it. I'd gone from drug addict to BBC One. I'd hit everything I wanted to achieve in life. Plus, I'd met my beautiful wife, and we were 3 months off of getting married. I had done it. I had achieved this picture perfect life, but I was at my lowest point. How do you figure, right? How is that fair? So what happened was in short, I basically ended up falling down the rabbit hole of looking how, you know, medication was great. It gave me a trampoline. It helped me see into the next room, right? It helped me understand myself a little bit more. It gave me foundations. But as a coach, I was like, there must be something around my physiology here. I went to therapy. I dealt with a lot of stuff. I put it to bed. But I was like, why am I so tired all the time? Why am I so lethargic all the time? You know, why can't I focus on anything? And I was surrounded by some great coaches, and what I wanted to start was looking at the physiology. I wanted to start looking at what was going on underneath my hood and how that was affecting my psychology. And what I'd realized is very quickly is that actually what was occurring was burnout. You know, and I had basically spent too much energy in life. I had basically hit chronic stress. Stress is a fantastic resource, and we're going to talk about stress and the power of stress and why we need stress in our life and why we can't avoid stress in our life. It's a fundamental thing to adapt and thrive as human beings. Stress is critical, but if you spend too much time in stress, you're in trouble. And that was the problem that I had, guys, is I had obviously gone through the city, worked in a sales environment for so many years, then retrained, set up a business, worked all the hours that, you know, God sends. And then within that, I had then done a BBC One project where I was responsible for 10 people with mental health conditions to take them to the London Marathon over 6 months of training, 140 hours of filming. By the time I got to the end, I was like, I am done. My system is done. Full burnout. I had no resources left to give. So I started on the journey of understanding that, looking more, and I kind of moved more away from the kind of running stuff. I was always with running. I was always worried about them. I always focused more on the 23 hours in the day that people weren't running, and looked at their general well-being, looked at the holistic side of things, looked at their mindset. And that's led me to where I am now, which is making an idiot of myself in front of human beings. I now work with individuals and organizations to help them unlock a little bit more energy in life, and understand the tools that they have at their disposal today to be able to achieve what they want tomorrow. And that energy is critical, not only to achieve that, but to be able to show up for loved ones at the end of the day. It's all very well selling a business for 10x. It's all very well this perfectionist capitalism, right? And growing a silicon business. But then what happens when you sell it for 10 million and your family aren't talking to you, your health's shot to shit, and you're basically, you know, on the verge of burning out yourself because you've given everything. And that's what I care about, is you achieving what you want, but also having the energy to be able to show up for loved ones and yourself at the end of the day. And this is my process. This is what I do, just so you understand. I look at the principles of well-being first and foremost, which we're going to talk about today. We're going to help you guys understand energy today and how you can influence your energy to get a better night's sleep, show up for loved ones, and hopefully just manage that burnout a little bit more effectively. I look at mindset interventions. I'm not a therapist, but we can start to just kind of nudge you and start getting people thinking a little bit differently. Growth versus fixed mindset. Joe talked a lot about that in the last talk, which was fantastic. And I help people influence behavior. I then help them understand the tools and applications that they have at their disposal today. And then I look at systems. I don't look at goals. We don't look at that fixed mindset of a singular destination. We realize you are constantly going to be A/B testing throughout your life. That is what is life about. There is no such thing as failure. Okay, well, there is such thing as failure, but failure is part of the journey to growth. We need failure to learn. We need to constantly A/B test. Pow. Right, so are you still there, guys? You with me? Send me your favorite emoji. This is my new favorite game, by the way. Send me your favorite emoji. I want to know what your favorite emoji is. Off you go. This is where people look at their keyboards and they go, how do I send an emoji? I have no idea. Amazing. So this is always interesting. So we've got to look at the principles of well-being, right? We want to understand the principles of well-being if we want to understand energy. And now these are the principles of well-being according to me. I'm not saying they are the principles of well-being, but again, if we want to make change, we have to understand and implement foundations. So the principles to well-being. And the first thing I want to talk about is that energy again, right? And I want you guys to answer this for me is, if I could refund you back 10% of the average energy you burn through in a day, how would you spend it in the evening? How would you use that energy, guys? So hit me up in the comments. I want to know, how would you use an extra 10% of energy in any given day? So we've got reading. Thank you very much, Marilla. I hope I pronounced that right. Knitting, learning, thinking, right? Absolutely. Exercise, walking the dog. Yeah, my dog takes a lot of energy to take him out for a walk, I'll tell you that. Skipping. Absolutely. Play badminton, right? So guitar playing, we'll talk to my family more. So what we're here, guys, is we're starting to understand this correlation between energy and what we want to achieve in life, right? Again, I'm just making energy a very real thing, right? That we need energy to not only perform activities, but we need energy to be able to show up and have conversations for loved ones. So if we want to understand energy and be able to influence energy, we have to look at stress, right? We have to look at the role of stress. And here's the thing that we need to look at. First of all, we have to separate how we look at stress. We have to realize there are stressors and there is our stress response, right? There are the things that are constantly talking to our non-conscious mind that's threatening either our values or our well-being system, right? We are constantly reading the environment outside of us. We're constantly threat assessing. We're constantly looking for risks, right? Have you ever taken a step out in front of a car and taken a step back without even realizing? That's your non-conscious mind talking to the environment around you. Environment is cueing behavior, feelings, emotions, and so forth. So these are stresses, right? That can be a project going south. That can be a boss not letting you go home in the evening because they want you to more. These are stresses. But here's the thing. What we have to understand, first of all, and this is where I get black and white, and I go through this really quickly, guys. I know there's a lot of gray area, but we have to understand that stresses cannot be avoided, right? They will never be avoided. You cannot avoid stresses. Stress is part of life. We need stress to fundamentally adapt and thrive as human beings. You need to stress your body in the gym for it to get stronger. The reason that you've got so good at your jobs, the reason you are able to deliver on time, the reason you are getting better at managing people is because of the stress of the problems that you have dealt with historically. Okay? You don't get better through hoping and positive and great experiences necessarily. You get stress by basically being challenged, by things being a struggle, by frustration. When we're in a place of struggle and frustration, that's when we're starting to prime plasticity within the brain. That's where we start to grow and adapt and learn. We need stress to grow. We need stress for adaptation. Okay? And what we have to start looking at is the difference between stress and stressors. So then we have a stress, but then we have a stress response, right? And hey, do you know what's amazing is our stress response? Because when you feel that tightness in your chest, when you feel your respiratory rate change, when you feel your field of vision narrowing in, that is your body's way of giving you the energy and focus to be able to complete the task in front of you. Right now, our man Usain Bolt is stressed. He is focused. His system is in first gear because his body is giving him the energy and focus to be able to complete the task in front of him. When I am standing here waiting to go on and I'm listening to what Joe's got to say and I'm thinking, this is absolutely amazing, this is wonderful, people are not going to like what I've got to say, I don't deserve to be here, right? My body's going up a gear, but what my body is doing is telling me this is important to me, and my heart rate is pumping, my respiratory rate is changing. Hey, hold on a sec, that's my body giving me the energy and focus to be able to do this, right? To be able to have the mental dexterity to do this. Like the chess masters that burn 6,000 calories, they need their brain, they need their system to give them energy and focus to be able to tackle. The brain operates on energy. When you convert energy, there is a waste product, CO2. Your heart pumps faster. Simple black and white, right? I'm not saying there's a lot of gray areas, but we understand when people start to see these things less as kind of an anxiety-inducing stressor and more as a challenge, we actually start to see a huge shift in mindset, which lends itself to a better physiological response, i.e. we still have that good stress response, but our makeup of hormones internally isn't as kind of dangerous or negative as it is when we frame it. Just think by thinking about stress differently, we can change our internal makeup. We can change our internal chemistry, which is pretty amazing, right? And if you want to understand that relationship between physiology and psychology, have you ever been really stressed and asked for a cuddle from your mum? That's because your body is releasing a little bit more of oxytocin hormone, which is the love hormone, which is designed to bring you closer to human beings. So when you have that feeling that you need to be close to someone that you love, that is physiology setting up psychology. There is a relationship going on there. So stress is our body's way of giving us energy and focus, but we have to realize that stress has to come in dosage, right? And that's the thing. Too much stress is a bad thing. Stress in dosage is a good thing. We're going to talk about that dosage and how to kind of open and close those stress cycles moving forward. So struggle and frustration are primers for growing and learning. Like, how do we know, right? If you're struggling and you're frustrated by something, if it's hard, good. Because that is the most likely place that you will find adaptation and plasticity, and your brain will start to learn and grow and create the pathways and adapt to the neurons. It's really funny, if you look at neurons in the brain trying to connect, they're like kind of like almost look really frustrated as they're trying to make that connection. So we need struggle, we need frustration. So next time you tell yourself frustrated by something, say, amazing, I'm about to learn a new skill. So we understand stress, but we've got to then understand rest. If stress is the investment, rest is the return on investment. Okay, we don't get stronger in the gym, we get stronger in the following days when we've created the right internal optimal environment for the body to grow stronger. Rest is where we assimilate learnings from struggle and frustration. Right now, my body is stressed. I'm sitting here trying to deliver this to you. I'm worrying about how many people might be dropping off this call. Am I triggering someone out there? Are people actually interested in this? Like, my head is ticking over a millionfold while I'm still trying to actively deliver this, and my body is giving me the resource to do it. The place where I will process this is when I close down the stress cycle, close down the energy cycle, when I push back and I move into a state of rest. That's when I'll start to get access to the cognitive resources to be able to process the learnings. The optimum version of rest is sleep, obviously. That's where we put everything to bed at night. But hey, you don't believe me? Cool. Ever found a problem to a life solution while walking down the beach? Let me know. Have you ever found a solution while walking through the woods? Have you ever found a solution while walking around the block? Have you ever found clarity to a problem while simply stepping away from the problem and going for a walk? That's your physiology adapting to the fact that you're shifting into a state of rest. You're no longer focused. You're no longer majorly stressed. And then you're getting access to new cognitive resources. With relief comes creativity, strategic thinking, and optimal decision making. Rest is not just for rest day. We're going to talk about that, how to add relief throughout the day. And it's not an on-off thing, right? It's about, we have different gears throughout the day. And a lot of problems is, Chris, and I'm not, forgive me, because I don't know the challenges that you have, but I'm going to use the example of not being able to sleep at night. So what happens is a lot of people go from first to fifth gear. They're on all day, they're switched on all day. They go, and then they lie in bed, and then suddenly their internal chemistry is changing. It's moving into a state of rest. It's calming down. And then the social brain, because it's not stimulated, is starting to try and process the day. We all think when we're meditating or breathing or slowing down that all those thoughts that we have mean that we're broken. We're not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it needs to do. Your brain is priming you for social engagement. It's thinking and processing the day. It just doesn't have a chance to do it on the micro, and we're going to talk about that moving forward. So it's not an on-off thing. It's all about gears. So I hope you're still with me, guys. Send me your favorite Some of your favorite letter on the keypad. I mean, this is awful now. It's probably to 8 at night. Are you still with me? You there? Give me your favorite letter on the keypad. F, cool. L for Laura, obviously. K, love it. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And I know I'm going at quite a pace here, and it's just because there's so much to get across, and I want to try and give at least some of you some things to take away today. So if we can understand stress and rest, we can understand our relationship with energy. Right? How we spend all that energy that we've got in the tank. Again, 20% of the calories consumed go to your brain. Energy is not just for physical exercise. Energy is critical for thinking, learning, managing our emotions, self-control, and willpower, right? So let me talk about that. Like, we need energy to be able to manage our self-control, to be able to wear a mask that everything's okay, right? It's like people are saying at the moment, go out there and start training and doing exercising, or, you know, start to learn to play the guitar or do all these things. I'm like, dude, we're not just working from home, we're working from home in a crisis. Okay. Us trying to keep our emotions in check is drawing on energy. Think chess player, right? They are keeping their emotions in check and trying to navigate the board. We are trying to keep our emotions in check and navigate the board of life right now. That is consuming energy, consuming calories, and it's depleting and tiring that willpower and self-control that we have. It's a muscle that depletes throughout the day. Have you ever thought about eating really healthy in the morning and then gone, stood in Tesco's or Sainsbury's at night and not being able to make a decision? It's not because you're a failure. It's just because you've got decision fatigue. Your energy is low. So then suddenly you reach for just like the stuff that you've created habit about, right? The easy stuff, right? Where you have to make no decisions and you just grab it. And one of the reasons that you might reach for alcohol and sugar, I'm not the nutritionist guy, but it's important to understand some of the research that's out there at the moment. The reason that you look at alcohol and sugar is because that's glucose, and fastest acting fuel source for our brain, glucose. Energy. It is pivotal to our willpower, self-control, focus, and behaviors. Stress is energy, energy is rest. And this comes down to understanding Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? As human beings, if we want to live our best life, if we want to self-actualize, if we want to, achieve all these things, this is Maslow, right? A much smarter guy than me, has letters after his name and everything. And, for him, he's kind of saying, first of all, you've got to service your physiological needs. Then we've got to deal with safety. And then we start to have the access and resources to deal with everything else, right? And I love Joe, and forgive me, I'm going to completely plagiarize this. Like, you said something about your therapist said to you that first of all you need to figure out how to, like, there was a step there, right? And for me, it reminded me of my therapy, where the first thing that I had to do was create time in the week to have my therapy, to be able to think after my therapy and process those thoughts and learn how to think and learn how to be comfortable with my thoughts. And by doing the way that I did that was I used to go for walks afterwards, because by dealing with my physiological needs, I then used to kind of move my way up the pyramid, as it were. Forgive me, Joe, I didn't mean to completely plagiarize. It was just a wonderful thing. It just reminded me of whatever I'm waffling on about now. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. As you can see, I'm looking. Oh, yeah, come on, Joe, give me a signal. So how can we practically understand energy then, right? I've got like 5 minutes or so, because we want to be out there clapping, and I want to be able to answer any questions that you've got. So we're going to roll through this really quickly. I'm available for questions afterwards, guys. You catch me at the Wellbeing CEO. DM me for questions. Like, I am here to help you. I don't just want to spark interest and then leave. Like, I do a lot of community stuff. I do a lot of free stuff. It's because I really just love helping people. So please do reach out to me afterwards. So we think about the energy cycle, right? A day is an energy cycle. You wake up in the morning, you spend energy, and you go to bed and you close a cycle. Okay, like let's just understand it from that perspective. But the problem is we get into first gear and then we go to fifth gear, and we don't understand that we've got second, third, or fourth. And what we don't do is realize that today is full of loads of tiny little energy cycles, right? And we have to navigate these tiny little energy cycles. Now, this slide is a bit much, but I was going to throw it in there. So, things that open up energy cycles, right? Emails, the news, this presentation, meetings, client calls, being focused, being creative, being that chess player, right? Motivation, food, because food can be a stress. It can open up an energy. It can open up a stress cycle. How can we close the stress cycle, right? And it's not about completely closing it into a state of rest, because remember, it's not an on or off thing. It's just how can we add relief throughout the day? Because when we add relief in between challenges and problems, we start to process on the micro. So then our brain is not just trying to lie there at night, suddenly getting an opportunity to deal with shit. So forgive me, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to swear so much on these things, because I was doing a webinar earlier on, and I realized that there's kids in the room because we're all working from home. So nature, physiology responds to nature. Our body knows what needs nature. Reading, humor, laughing. Me and my wife every night are watching The Office US. Give me a shout if you love The Office at the moment. So we're watching that. Humor is just helping us manage the stress cycle of the day. So gratitude, hobbies, journaling, solitude, and sleep, time alone. These things help. And the reason that I've got this middle ground in there is understanding that exercise is a great stress relief, but we've also got to remember that it is energy demanding, right? So you have to think about exercise as your own tiny little a cycle. So it's okay if you go into it, but realize you've got to spend energy exercising. It costs energy. So you need to make sure you're doing your cool downs, you're relaxing afterwards, or redefine energy exercise as going for a walk. 145 minutes of walking a week has similar mental health benefits as antidepressants for some people. This is the thing. It doesn't have to be HIIT sessions every week. These things are very energy demanding. We've only got so much in the tank. Socializing, right? Wearing the mask and turning up to meetups and stuff like that draws on self-control, draws on willpower to try and keep our shit together. You know, I used to walk into social environments. I used to have a community that I used to go and do talk every week. They would meet up. I would walk into the room and pretend to be on my phone just to get the lay of the land in the room. And I'd walk back out and walk back in. And when I was comfortable, then I would start and say hello to people. Do you know how much energy that takes to keep your emotions in gear like that? Because I was so anxious and didn't think I deserved to be there. So as much as talking is good, for some of us, sometimes we want to be introverts. Be introverts. It's great to be introverts. Be in solitude, be by yourself. You don't have to be so bloody connected as the world is telling us that we have to be connected. Own your solitude. You've got superhero powers. If you're a solitude person, own it. It's fantastic. But maybe, you know, instead of being, you know, you got to think about where can I get my little dosage of human connection? And breath, I mean, absolutely. I'm a performance breath coach. Breath isn't a lot of what I do with, but it's really also to understand that, you know, jumping in ice baths or doing, you know, Wim Hof super ventilation stuff actually is opening up a stress cycle. It's costing us energy. It's a whole other story. But breath is, or do people say like do breath holds, do box breathing? For some people, remember your respiratory system is dialed up into the part of brain responsible for emotions. When people have panic attacks, their respiratory rate changes first before they have an emotion. So for some people, actually holding their breath can cause that signature to cause panic and fear. Right? So maybe just start with a gentle inhale and exhale. It's just, I'm helping people understand it's so different. It's not one size fits all. So that's that. So 10 breaths up to 10 minutes, nasal only, inhale, exhale. Yes, Melissa, grab me. I got, we know Wim, I've got a lot to talk about. 5 to 15 minute walk, great thing. A reframing exercise, quick chat. I can send a workbook. I can send this out. I'm going to roll through because we've got to get this done. So quick recap. Cycles vary in length from a single instance through to a day, week, month, or year. Keeping the cycle open too long leads to chronic stress. There's only so long you can stay in first gear for. Cycles can be deceptive. The good and the bad both cost energy. The more focused your vision and attention is, the more energy you are spending. I'm focused. My attention is on you right now. That means I'm spending energy, right? This is a great thing that I'm doing right now. I'm loving it. I'm going to learn from it. Hopefully you guys take something away, but it's costing me energy. When you guys are sitting there working away on projects, doing what you do, being creative in what you do, coding and so forth, all this kind of stuff, that is costing you energy. So you know what? Damn straight, you're tired at the end of the day. Good on you. Nasal breathing is less energy demanding. If you're sitting there and coding or whatever, you're working on UX, your designs, put tape over your mouth, breathe nasal only. That's a whole other subject matter. Closing the cycles equals money back. Learn to close the cycle. You start to get 1%, 2% energy back throughout the day. It starts to equal to that 10%. But we're living in the upside down of the world at the moment. Stranger things. I had to put that in there. I don't know why I put it up there. Realize that, you know, and the reason I wanted to put this in here is because it's all very well me telling you this stuff, but the world is upside down at the moment. The environments that we're in are cueing all kinds of different behaviors. It's hard work trying to create new habits and routines. We are working in a state of challenge at the moment, and you know the world is upside down, and our bodies are feeling that. You know, again, environmental cues are everything. You know, the fact that we're not getting up and going to work and going to the office isn't necessarily cueing the behavior that we want and so forth and we need. So it's about how are you starting to set up those cues. Sorry, I'm waffling a little bit. It's me. So start to think of your questions, get them through. The final thing that I say, and the reason I put Dudley up there, this is going to be real quick, is when I came off my meds, I wanted company, and I thought a dog would be great. Dogs are good for mental health, but puppies are not good for mental health, let me tell you. And what happened was I kind of pushed him away, and I kind of was just, I didn't really like him, to be honest with you, and I was looking for every reason to get rid of him. And about a year in, I got a reason to get rid of him, which is I had a lot of global travel with a job that I'd got as a consultant for a company, and I got it, bring it to the table to my wife that now's time to rehome him. And I saw that she was the result of the challenge that she'd been through, and kind of how the representation of fatherhood in our marriage was me trying to walk away from the baby in our life, as it were. And that really upset her. And I saw that upset her so much that I needed to change. And my biggest fear was not being angry like my dad, right? It was actually walking away from my kids like my dad walked away from me. And by doing that, I realized is actually, if I wanted to learn the talent of being a father, I needed to lean in. I needed to practice. I needed to A/B test every single day. And that's the thing, guys. If you want to learn a new talent, if you want to start to kind of manage your imposter syndromes, and you want to start to kind of manage your energy more effectively, it's about constant learning and constant development. And it's really, really important that you understand that, you know, I had to lean into this guy every day, and I'm still leaning in now. But if I wanted to be a good dad down the line, I had to do it. I've really rushed that story because I wanted to get into the end. Promise takeaways and understanding the basic human needs. I hope you've understood that. How physiology influences psycho, the role of energy, how to access creativity. Next steps is practice, practice, practice. I think I got from drug addict to that guy. It took me about 10 years. It takes work. Email with questions, and please move it forwards. You know, share this knowledge with someone, have a conversation with about it. That's me done.
Thank you so much for sharing such a personal story. How many calories do you think you burnt during that presentation?
Dude, well,
I reckon it was a lot.
And it's a lot. It's a lot. Like, it's really, it's, you know, that's what we got to think, guys. Like, you know, these kind of things, you're being focused. Sorry. And thank you, Lena, for explaining. Designers research product. We give a lot of energy to our end users. We validate our approach. See, this like sitting there and thinking and navigating the world is an energy demanding thing. It's hard work.
Okay, so we do have a few minutes for questions if anyone has in the chat. So Lena, I think, how can we possibly reach self-actualization when we need validation from others? So that's a bit of a paradox there. How can we, yeah, I'll let you take that one, I think.
Thanks, Lena. That's I'm super appreciative of that. That's how can we possibly reach that when we need validation from others? Okay, so maybe not. I'm not going to coach my way through this because I don't know you, and this is a really tough question to answer. So, how have I dealt with me having to? How have I reached my potential of where I am now, and dealt with the fact I also do need validation from others? Like, I'm constantly craving validation and love from others, especially men, because, you know, my old man left me, and I'm constantly looking for other men to accept me into their tribes. So how have I achieved this, but kind of countered that? I've accepted it, and I've accepted it as part of my human nature and who I am, and I've welcomed it, because that validation that I seek from other people is also the energy that I have to try and connect with people. The good and the bad are always the superhero powers, right? Like, I really try for people to like me. I really try to fit in, and I have done for years and years and years. And, you know, that makes me work harder. It makes me work harder at learning now and developing myself, because I want people to accept me. So I kind of, you know, channel those emotions into more good. I accept they're part of who I am. Some days they take over, but I wake up the next day, I learn, I reflect, and I keep moving forward. And I realize there's no end goal. It's always just constantly, it's going to be learning, learning, and learning. I hope that gives you some kind of answer, Lena. It's a I don't want to rush you. Yeah. So how can we recognize what is a stress cycle opener, especially when they might be disguised as closers? Again, big subject. So anything that's causing you to be focused, where your field of vision is narrowed in on a task or a situation, and that could be a life problem, right? If you're constantly just thinking about, you know, the conversations that you've got to have with loved ones and so forth, or if you're thinking of, like, if someone in work or something has said something, like, your body's ramped up, right? Your head's in gear. So if something is echoing in your head and you are only focused on that problem, or if there's a physical task that has got your focus and your attention on anything that is just narrowing your vision and stopping you looking at the bigger picture of your life, that's kind of one of the signals. The second signal is listen to your body, right? Listen to your inside view. It's a really powerful one. Like, when your breathing changes, when you feel that slight tightness in your chest, and you're like, what's going on here, right? Like, that's your body's way of saying, hey, there's something important here that you need to recognize. They're all practical ways of doing this, by the way. So if you really want to kind of geek out on me, you can how you measure your CO2 tolerance levels, and it starts to look at how you're managing. There's a whole load of stuff there, but hopefully that's a couple of things for you.
We have a question from Christina. Have you read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a...
I haven't. I'm not giving a... I like that, just forcing you to ask the question. No, I haven't, Christina, but I have heard very, very, very good things. And I think it is probably... I know I've probably got it here somewhere. If I may throw back two reading recommendations for you guys, and you can email me or message me on, and I can send you over my reading list. The Upside of Stress helps people. That's a great book. And there's a second book called Mindset. So if you really want to understand how you can look at the research between going from a fixed to growth mindsets, look at a book called Mindsets by Carol Dweck, which is a fantastic book.
I'm aware it's 5 to 8, so just the final question, I think, from Emma. As we start to adjust to a new normal away from others, How do you think it's going to impact our stress when we head back to something relative to normal? Good question.
It's a wonderful question. And this is something that I'm actually in constant conversation about with fellow coaches and individuals at the moment, is how do we start to respond to this? And I think it's going to impact it, because actually once we've adapted, for a lot of us, and we start to realize that actually the way that we were living was spending a lot of energy on commuting, and, you know, we're starting to get back time to spend on ourselves, hopefully. And if we're starting to kind of see the positives of this and being able to kind of manage our energy throughout the days, then it's kind of like, are we going to give that up? And I think the changes are going to have to come from organizations and bosses. They're going to have to listen to their workforces, and they're going to have to say, hey, like, actually, we've really enjoyed this. We've enjoyed being able to have this freedom. People love freedom in their lives. They love to feel autonomous. How are you going to keep adapting to ensure that we can keep doing this now? So I think the change has to come from kind of organizations being able to maintain the learnings from this for people. As a bit of a wishy-washy answer, I hope that gives you the thoughts. I think it's a wonderful I'm going to probably go away. That's the thing I'm going to think about, Emma.
Okay, guys. I think we'll formally end the event now. I'd like to thank both of our speakers, Joe and Chevy, the committee members who helped support the meeting, all of you guys who attended. I think we peaked at about 97 participants at one point. So thank you all for that. We will obviously be running remote events for the foreseeable future in line with government advice. A post-event survey will go out at about 9 o'clock, so please do let us know feedback about certain times. Obviously, we recognise 6:30 may not work for anyone who has younger children, but obviously we can work on putting our events at different times. So yeah, just please let us know what works for you guys, and we'll certainly keep going during this period. I won't close the meeting. I'll just obviously encourage Chevy to I'll take back control of the meeting. I won't close it if you want to have your own private discussions, but I think formally we'll leave it there, and I will be on my balcony in about 3 minutes giving my applause to the essential workers. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks for that, Chevy and Joe. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Catch you later.
Bye. Have a good night.